is horrible. War is one of the worst things that humans do to each other. So why do we do it? Why do nations keep going to war with each other? Take a look at this picture. This is what we call the 1,000-yard stare. This is a picture from a famous novel about the World War II. This represents the trauma, the suffering of warfare. Why do we put ourselves through this? Why do nations keep doing this? Why do we keep going to war with each other? Here we see another horrible scene, horrors of war. These are some Austrians killing Serbians. It could be anybody, right? It doesn't have to be Austrians and Serbians. It could be anybody. Cold-blooded killing. Remember that cold-blooded, premeditated. This is quite an important point about what I'm going to say. Wars. Here we have Americans and British killing each other. Nations put together armies, organize soldiers, feed them, pay for it with taxes, give them weapons, put a lot of money into it. Why do nations keep doing this? Why do we still have wars in the world? Well, perhaps you are thinking of some answers. There are many answers that are suggested. For instance, evil leaders, religious hatred, racial hatred, or perhaps countries just want to conquer other countries, take over, get territory. I think all of these different reasons, and you can probably think of more, they all point in one direction. It's something to do with human nature. It's something to do, I'm going to suggest, with how we have evolved, with our evolution, our evolutionary psychology. And there's a lot of science to support this idea. But before I go into the evolution, first question today is, why do nations go to war with each other? The second question is, how can we stop them from going to war with each other? So there are a number of solutions that have been suggested. Okay, one way that you can try to solve conflicts is negotiations, talking about it, right? Sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't work. Usually, countries go for this solution when they've already been at war for a long time and they're exhausted, right? Like we see here, they're trying to solve the conflict after a long time. We see this, you can think of conflicts that are going on today where they are trying to solve it by sitting around a table. It sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't work. It's not a guaranteed solution. Here we see a picture of the United Nations. Right? The United Nations was set up to negotiate about conflicts. Sometimes it works, sometimes it just, for a variety of reasons, doesn't work. So that's one solution, negotiations. Another solution is simply to make everybody very afraid, right? The best way of doing this is nuclear weapons. If you have nuclear weapons, everybody is scared to death. Nobody wants to use them. So the idea is that fear can guarantee peace by making everybody very afraid. This can work. It worked in the Cold War, but sometimes, of course, there are risks of this. It doesn't necessarily, come without risks. What if somebody presses the button by accident? Then you end up with this. So, is that a good solution? Could be, but sometimes it works, sometimes it's a risk. So what I'm going to go into now is, I'm going to go into three things we can learn from evolution to tell us something about why nations go to war with each other and how we can prevent this in the future. Okay? The first thing we can learn from evolution is that competition drives cooperation. Right? Nations exist. If we look back at our evolutionary past, nations and groups of humans exist because it's impossible for an individual to survive on their own. In the African savannah, if a human was on their own, they would be eaten by lions, they would be killed, they had no chance of survival. So we evolved in groups in order to survive. And we also came together into groups in order to compete with other groups. The larger your group, the better organized it is, the better your cooperation, the better chance you have of defeating other groups or surviving, right? So competition drives cooperation. The reason why we live in nations like the Czech Republic is because in a nation we are stronger, right? It's a good thing. We are stronger in the group. But at the same time, it drives us to compete with other groups. We compete with other nations. We want to defeat them. We want to be stronger than them. So it's a good thing. Cooperation is a good thing, but that is what also is also connected to war, right? Second point I want to make is that culture evolves and we evolve with it. So in evolution, we evolved culture. Of course, our ancestors millions of years ago did not have any culture, right? Culture evolved as we evolved. So for example, our food, right? We no longer eat raw meat, we cook meat. We learned how to use fire, we cooked. This had physical results. Our jaws became smaller, our teeth became weaker, our guts became smaller, right? If you look at apes, they don't eat cooked meat, they have much stronger jaws. So we evolved culture, we evolved religion, we evolved political systems, we evolved a lot of different systems to help us to evolve, to help us to survive. And these systems that we evolve allow us to cooperate within the group, right? Why does religion exist? In my view, it exists in order to bind people together, to make them stronger as a group, right? That's one of what science shows us. And other elements of culture are the same. Okay, the third point I'm making here is that violence can be reactive or proactive. Now, this is a very important point. Reactive violence or reactive aggression is, for example, when you react to something that's happening. It's perhaps somebody offended you and you feel angry and you strike back, right? You react to something that's happening around you and you react violently. This, in evolution, in our evolutionary past, if you look at animals, they do this much more often than we do. We have a much better ability to control our emotions and control our reactions and our aggression. But at the same time, we are more capable of proactive violence. Proactive violence is violence that is premeditated, that is organized, that is done in a cold-blooded way, such as warfare, right? So while we have evolved as we are here, functioning in a group, we don't hit each other generally day to day. I hope you don't hit each other day to day. We don't do that as much as our ancestors did, who are probably more prone to this. We have evolved to be more peaceful in a group. But at the same time, we have also evolved to be capable of massive violence in warfare, right? There's no denying it. We have evolved to be very good at proactive violence, which is what warfare is. Okay, so I'm now going to look at some solutions, some possibilities for how we can overcome our tendency to warfare. But first, let's have a look at our evolutionary history, right? You can see the branching evolution that we came from. And if you look very closely at this diagram, you will see that our closest relatives, the Neanderthals, of course, died out. We are the only surviving humans, Homo sapiens. Our closest surviving relatives are the chimps and the bonobos, right? Chimps and bonobos, therefore, they are not, we are closely related to them. We are not descended from them, but we share some characteristics with them. We share more characteristics with them than with any other animals. And chimps and bonobos are very interesting. They are closely related, but chimps live on the right side of the Congo River. Bonobos live on the left side of the Congo River. Luckily for the bonobos, as you're going to see. So I'm going to tell you something about chimps and bonobos, the differences between them. Chimps are dominated by males. Males dominate the group. They can be very aggressive. They are capable of proactive aggression. They have been observed hunting down and killing individuals from other groups, just in the same way that we do in warfare. They are capable of this type of proactive aggression. Bonobos, on the other hand, they are quite different. They live on the other side of the river, away from the chimps, luckily for them. When they have conflicts in the group, the females are actually more influential in the group. And when they have conflicts in the group, they tend to solve these conflicts not through aggression, but actually through sex, through sexual activity. That's literally what science tells us. So we have these two groups, chimps and bonobos, who I think, we could say represent perhaps two sides of our evolved nature. Now, what does this tell us about solving war? Well, make love, not war. Right. I'm not going to suggest that we should tell our leaders, instead of fighting wars, to have sex with each other, right? I don't think that's very practical, although it might be an interesting experiment, right? Might be worth a try, but I don't think it's going to happen, right? So that's maybe not practical. What we can try to do, one possibility is, and I think this is, evolution is not something that stops, it's something that continues on and on. And it's something that we have changed with it. One way to channel the emotions that lead to warfare could be to direct them in a different direction, into sports, following sports, or perhaps something like the Eurovision Song Contest, where nations can compete with each other without actually having to be violent, without actually having to kill anybody. This is one possibility, but of course, maybe that's not the answer to everything. External threats drive cooperation, right? So I'm sure if there was an alien invasion, right, probably all the nations of the earth would come together and cooperate. Well, so far we don't see any alien invasion. That would be a bit of an extreme thing. Another one is environmental destruction. Perhaps we could cooperate on that, but as we see today, it's not really working. It's not really bringing nations together as well as it should, right? Perhaps it could in future. Another possibility is that we actually, instead of just evolving naturally, something that may happen is that we take an artificial approach to evolution. I'm not suggesting that we should do this, but it's something that may happen, that we may try to change our genes to make ourselves more like bonobos, less like chimps. So what I want to say at the end is, let's hope that in the future we can evolve, whether naturally or artificially, to become more like bonobos, less like chimps, more peace, less war. Let's hope that's the case. Thank you very much.